Your obsession with closure is keeping your wounds open. You're waiting for an apology that may never come. An explanation that may never make sense. A reconciliation that may never feel complete. Meanwhile, your life is passing by while you stand guard over old hurts, preserving them like precious artifacts. You've convinced yourself that you're honoring your pain by remembering it. That forgetting would somehow mean it didn't matter. But what if the most respectful thing you could do with your suffering is to use it as a foundation rather than a ceiling? What if holding on to hurt isn't a sign of your depth, but evidence of your fear that without this familiar pain, you wouldn't know who you are anymore? Pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. The moment you truly understand this truth is the moment you take back control of your life. I once met a man in the Bahamas who had lost everything. His business had failed. His wife had left him. And his friends had abandoned him when he needed them most. When I sat with him, I expected to find a broken man. Instead, he looked at me with clear eyes and said, "They took my possessions, but they couldn't take my peace." That statement changed my life. It revealed a profound truth. No one can hurt you without your permission. You see, most people live as if their happiness depends on circumstances and other people's actions. They're like leaves blown about by every wind, every harsh word, every disappointment. But you were not created to be a victim of circumstances. You were created to be a master of your responses. The first key to ensuring nothing and nobody will ever hurt you again is understanding that hurt doesn't come from what happens to you. Hurt comes from how you interpret and respond to what happens to you. When someone speaks harshly to you, they're just making noise with their mouth. The words themselves have no power. It's the meaning you attach to those words that creates the feeling of hurt. The power was never in their hands. It was always in yours. I grew up in poverty. We had very little. Other children would mock my clothes, on my lunch, even my accent, for years. I believed their words defined me. I would come home and cry, feeling worthless and small, until one day, my grandmother sat me down and told me something I'll never forget. She said, "Son, when someone throws words at you, you decide whether to catch them or let them fall. Their words are their problem. Your reaction is yours." Until that day, I stopped catching harmful words. I stopped giving others the authority to define my worth. And that's what I'm here to tell you today. You can stop giving others the power to hurt you. This doesn't mean building walls or becoming cold. It means establishing what I call personal sovereignty, the unshakable knowledge that you alone control your emotional responses. Think about this. When someone cuts you off in traffic, one person might explode in rage. Another might remain calm. And someone else might even feel compassion, wondering if that person is rushing to an emergency. Same event. 3 different responses. The event itself carried no inherent emotional charge. The emotion came from within each person. Your life will transform when you truly understand that the power to hurt you doesn't reside in other people's actions, but in your response to those actions. I remember counseling a woman whose husband had betrayed her trust. She was consumed by pain, replaying his actions in her mind day and night. "He destroyed me," she kept saying. I asked her, "Are you giving him permission to keep hurting you long after the event is over?" She looked confused. So I explained, every time you choose to replay that memory with bitterness, you're allowing yesterday's pain to poison today's possibilities. You're giving him permission to hurt you again and again. 3 months later, she returned a different person. I took back my power. She said, I stopped waiting for him to heal me, and I healed myself. This is the foundation of personal sovereignty. It's not about pretending you don't feel pain. It's about recognizing that you control how long that pain stays and what it does to you. Most people don't realize they've given away their power. They hand it over in small moments when they change their plans because someone might disapprove, when they silence their truth to keep peace, when they base their self-worth on compliments or criticism. What would your life look like if you reclaimed that power? What would change if you decided that your value is not up for debate? Your peace is not for sale. And your joy is not dependent on others' behavior. I'm not speaking about arrogance or disconnection from others. I'm talking about a quiet, unshakable knowledge of who you are and what you control. In my years of counseling people from all walks of life, I've noticed something remarkable. Those who suffer the most are not those who experience the most hardship. They're those who believe they have no choice in how they respond to hardship. The secret to ensuring nothing and nobody will ever hurt you again lies in this truth. You always have a choice in how you respond. When criticism comes, and it will come, you can choose to examine it for truth or release it without absorbing its sting. When rejection knocks at your door, and it will knock, you can choose to see it not as a statement about your worth, but as a redirection toward where you belong. The moment someone says something hurtful, pause. In that pause lies your power. In that space between stimulus and response lies your freedom. I watched my own brother apply this principle when his business partner cheated him. Instead of being consumed by rage or revenge, he paused. He chose his response carefully. I will not allow his dishonesty to make me dishonest. He said, I will not allow his darkness to dim my light. He rebuilt from scratch, preserving his integrity and peace. 5 years later, when his former partner's schemes collapsed, my brother was in a position to help him. Your actions hurt our business, he told him. But they didn't hurt my character. That was always mine to protect. This is the essence of personal sovereignty, knowing what is yours to control and what isn't. You cannot control others' actions, but you can control your response. You cannot control every circumstance, but you can control your attitude toward every circumstance. Stop waiting for people to change to protect your feelings. Stop hoping circumstances will align perfectly before you allow yourself to be at peace. The power has always been within you. You might be thinking, but you don't understand how deeply I've been hurt. You're right. I don't know your specific pain. But I know that as long as you believe someone else holds the key to your healing, you remain locked in your pain. The path to ensuring nothing and nobody will ever hurt you again begins with this decision. I alone am responsible for my emotional responses. This doesn't mean the hurt won't come. It means the hurt no longer controls you. It means you've stopped giving away the keys to your peace of mind. The most powerful prison in the world is not made of concrete and steel. It's made of memories that we refuse to release when we hold on to past hurts. We don't punish those who hurt us, we punish ourselves. We carry the weight of yesterday into the promise of tomorrow. I once visited a prison in South Africa where Nelson Mandela was held for 27 years. What struck me most wasn't the tiny cell or the harsh conditions. It was something Mandela said after his release as I walked out the door toward the gate that would lead to my freedom. I knew if I didn't leave my bitterness and hatred behind, I would still be in prison. This man understood something profound. Freedom isn't just physical. True freedom is emotional. And you cannot experience emotional freedom while chained to past hurts. Many of you are nodding right now because you know exactly what I'm talking about. You're physically free to move forward, But emotionally, you're still living in the moment when someone betrayed you, abandoned you, or failed to value you. You're still having arguments in your mind with people who aren't even in your life anymore. I met a successful businessman in Tokyo who had everything money could buy, a beautiful home, thriving companies, respect in his community. But in private conversation, he confessed he couldn't enjoy any of it. When I asked why, he said, because my father never believed I would amount to anything. Even now, at 62 years old, I'm still trying to prove him wrong. Think about that, 62 years old, and still controlled by words spoken decades ago. Still giving power to someone who wasn't even present in his life anymore. Are you doing the same? Are you still trying to prove something to someone who hurt you? Are you still seeking validation from those who devalued you? Are you still explaining yourself to those who misunderstood you? The path to ensuring nobody hurts you again requires breaking the chains that bind you to past hurts. These chains weren't placed on you. You fashioned them yourself through rumination, through rehearsing old pain, through defining yourself by your wounds rather than your wisdom. Breaking these chains begins with a simple but powerful truth. What happened to you is not who you are. Let me say that again. What happened to you is not who you are. You are not defined by how others treated you. You are not the sum of your disappointments. You are not the collection of times you were overlooked, underestimated, or mistreated. I remember counseling a young woman who had experienced severe rejection in her childhood. She developed a habit of entering every relationship expecting to be abandoned. Consequently, she either pushed people away before they could leave her, or she became so clingy that she suffocated the relationship. Either way, her fear created the very outcome she dreaded. One day I asked her, what if that rejection wasn't a prophecy about your future, but simply an event in your past? What if it says nothing about your worthiness and everything about the limitations of those who couldn't see your value? 6 months later, she called me. I've been trying something new, she said. Instead of seeing myself through the lens of past rejection, I've been seeing those rejections through the lens of who I know myself to be. And suddenly, they don't look like verdicts on my worth anymore. They look like missed opportunities for them. Not for me. This is the power of breaking chains. It's not about denying what happened. It's about denying what happened the power to define who you are and what's possible for you. Some of you have been holding on to hurts so long that they've become part of your identity. You introduce yourself to new experiences through the filter of old wounds. I'm the person who was betrayed. I'm the one whose dream was crushed. I'm the child who was neglected. But what if you started introducing yourself differently? Not as the wounded one, but as the one who learned to heal. Not as the betrayed one, but as the one who learned discernment. Not as the neglected one, but as the one who learned to value yourself regardless of others' capacity to do so. Breaking chains also requires understanding a fundamental truth about forgiveness. Forgiveness isn't about the other person. It's about you. It's not saying what they did was okay. It's saying you won't allow what they did to continue controlling your life. When you hold on to resentment, you're drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. Forgiveness is putting down that poison. I was called to counsel a man who had been carrying anger toward his brother for 20 years over a business dispute. For 2 decades. They hadn't spoken. Family gatherings were awkward. His children didn't know their cousins. I asked him a simple question: who's suffering more from this unforgiveness, you or your brother? He thought for a moment and then replied, I think about it every day. He probably doesn't think about it at all. Then who's the prisoner? I asked. That question led to a reconciliation that healed not just their relationship, but an entire family system. Not because what happened wasn't serious, it was. But because he finally understood that his unforgiveness wasn't punishing his brother, it was punishing him and everyone he loved. Breaking the chains of past hurts requires courage. It requires looking at painful memories not to relive them, but to release them. It means asking, what can I learn from this that will make me stronger? What truth about myself did this experience reveal that I can carry forward? What capacity for resilience did I discover that I might not have known otherwise? When you break these chains, something remarkable happens. You stop entering new experiences looking for evidence that the past will repeat itself. You stop filtering the present through the lens of previous pain. You become available to the possibility that today might bring something entirely different than what yesterday brought. I spoke with a woman who had experienced a series of professional setbacks. Each time she tried to advance, something went wrong. She began to believe success wasn't possible for her. In our conversation, she realized she was carrying the expectation of failure into each new opportunity. She was so focused on protecting herself from disappointment that she wasn't fully committing to success. What if, I suggested, you entered your next opportunity with your hands open instead of your fists clenched? What if you stopped preparing for failure and started preparing for possibility? 6 months later, she secured the promotion she'd been seeking for years. Not because the circumstances had changed dramatically, but because she had stopped allowing past disappointments to dictate her future expectations. Breaking the chains of past hurts doesn't happen in a single moment. It's a practice. A daily choice to focus not on what hurt you, but on what healed you. Not on what knocked you down, but on what helped you rise again. Your life is your territory. Every king knows that his kingdom requires walls not to isolate, but to protect what's valuable. Too many people live with their emotional gates wide open, allowing anyone to wander in and rearrange their peace of mind. I was teaching in Singapore when a young professional approached me. He was successful by all external measures, but constantly felt drained. I give everything to everyone, he told me. But at the end of the day, I have nothing left for myself. This man had no emotional boundaries. He was trying to be everything to everyone. And in the process, becoming nothing to himself. Boundaries aren't walls that disconnect you from others. They're fences with gates that you control. They determine who gets access to your time, your energy, your emotions, and your peace. When I counsel couples, I often find that their greatest conflicts stem not from major disagreements, but from minor boundary violations that accumulated over time. Small intrusions that went unaddressed until resentment built a wall where a simple fence would have sufficed. Building your emotional fortress begins with self-awareness. You must know what drains you and what fills you. You must recognize the difference between discomfort that leads to growth and distress that leads to damage. A woman in my leadership program realized she was allowing colleagues to contact her at all hours, disrupting her family time and sleep. When I asked why, she said, I want to be seen as dependable. But at what cost? Her health was suffering. Her relationships were strained. She was building her reputation at the expense of her well-being. I helped her establish clear boundaries, specific hours when she was available and when she wasn't. She communicated these boundaries respectfully but firmly. Some people pushed back initially, but eventually they adapted. And something unexpected happened. Her colleagues began to respect her more. not less. Your boundaries teach others how to treat you. When you don't enforce them, you train people to ignore them. Building your emotional fortress also requires understanding your non-negotiables, those core values and needs that aren't open for compromise. Too often, we negotiate away our peace trying to accommodate others' expectations. I work with a talented artist who kept abandoning his creative projects whenever someone criticized his work. His desire for approval was overriding his need for authentic expression. His emotional fortress had no gate anyone's opinion could walk right in and rearrange his sense of purpose. We identified his non-negotiable, the freedom to create authentically. He learned to welcome constructive feedback without surrendering his vision. He built a fortress that protected his creative spirit while remaining open to growth. This is the balance of healthy boundaries. They're firm but not rigid. Protective but not isolating. They filter out harm while allowing an opportunity. Some of you have built fortresses with no gates at all, impenetrable walls that keep out pain but also keep out love. Others have boundaries so permeable that you're at the mercy of every passing emotion, opinion, or expectation. Neither extreme serves you. A strong emotional fortress includes the courage to say no without guilt and yes without fear. It includes the wisdom to distinguish between criticism that offers growth and criticism that only diminishes. It includes the discernment to know who deserves access to your vulnerable spaces and who has proven they cannot be trusted with them. One of the most powerful boundaries you can establish is with your own thoughts. When negative memories or anxious projections try to invade your mental space, you have the authority to redirect your focus. I teach a practice called thought filtering, where you ask 3 questions before giving mental real estate to a thought. Is it true? Is it helpful? Is it necessary? If a thought doesn't pass at least 2 of these tests, it doesn't deserve your attention. Your emotional fortress is built one boundary at a time, one decision at a time, one redirected thought at a time. It's constructed through daily practices of self-respect and self-awareness. The purpose of this fortress isn't to shut out the world. It's to create a safe space from which you can engage with the world on your terms, from a position of strength rather than vulnerability, choice rather than compulsion. When your emotional fortress is secure, external circumstances lose their power to determine your internal state. You become unshakable, not because nothing tries to shake you, but because you're anchored to something stronger than passing storms. The most liberating day of your life will be the day you stop blaming others for your pain and start owning your responses. This is not about accepting mistreatment. It's about accepting that you alone control how you respond to mistreatment. I met a man in Jamaica who had experienced tremendous betrayal in business. His partners had stolen his ideas and left him financially devastated. For 2 years, he lived in bitterness, telling his story of victimhood to anyone who would listen. When we spoke, I asked him a question that changed everything. How has this story served you? He looked confused. Served me. It destroyed me. Then why do you keep it alive by telling it? Every time you repeat this story with yourself as the helpless victim, you strengthen its hold on you. The truth hit him like a lightning bolt. He realized he had been perpetuating his own suffering by refusing to take responsibility for his response to what happened. 3 months later, he contacted me. I stopped telling the victim story. He said, I started telling a different story about what I learned, how I grew stronger, what I'll do differently. And suddenly, I felt like myself again. This is the paradox of personal responsibility. It feels like it would be heavier after all. Isn't it easier to blame others for our pain? But blame keeps you stuck. Responsibility sets you free. When you take responsibility, you move from passive to active, from helpless to empowered. You transform from an object that things happen to into a subject who determines what those things mean. A woman in my leadership program was constantly upset by her manager's abrupt communication style. He makes me feel worthless, she said. I gently corrected her. He can't make you feel anything. He speaks words. You assign meaning to those words. This subtle shift from he makes me feel to I feel when he restored her power. She realized she could choose a different interpretation of his behavior. Perhaps his abruptness wasn't personal but reflected his own stress. Perhaps it said more about his limitations than her value. When she stopped taking his communication style personally, it lost its power to hurt her. She responded with calm professionalism rather than emotional reactivity. And interestingly, as her responses changed, so did their dynamic. Taking responsibility doesn't mean you won't feel pain. It means you won't become your pain. It means you recognize that between stimulus and response lies a space. And in that space is your power to choose. I counseled a couple whose marriage was deteriorating because of constant arguments. Each blamed the other for pushing their buttons. When I suggested that no one could push a button that didn't exist, they were confused. I explained that our triggers, those things that provoke outsized emotional responses, aren't installed by others. They're formed through our past experiences, beliefs, and unhealed wounds. Others may activate these triggers, but they didn't create them. This perspective transformed their conflicts. Instead of asking, why are you doing this to me? They began asking, why am I responding this way? What does this reaction tell me about what I need to heal? Personal responsibility shifts your focus from what you can't control others' actions to what you can, your responses, perceptions, and choices. The moment you embrace this responsibility is the moment nothing and nobody can hurt you again, not because painful situations won't arise, but because you no longer give situations the power to define your emotional state. This isn't just freedom from hurt. It's freedom to create. When you stop expending energy blaming others for your pain, you have more energy to invest in your purpose, your joy, your growth. Personal responsibility isn't about shouldering blame. It's about claiming your power, the power to interpret, to respond, to heal, and ultimately to transform any experience into something that serves rather than diminishes you. Freedom from hurt isn't a destination you reach once. It's a path we walk daily. It's made of small choices that, over time, create an unshakable foundation of inner peace. I met Sarah, a teacher from Colorado, who had experienced devastating betrayal when her husband of 20 years suddenly left without explanation. For months, she was consumed by questions without answers, by grief that seemed bottomless. When she came to my seminar, she asked, how do I stop feeling this pain when there's been no apology, no explanation, no closure? I told her something that seemed impossible at the time. You can choose to give yourself what others didn't give you. You can be the source of your own closure. Sarah began a daily practice of emotional self-sovereignty. Each morning, she wrote down one thing she could control that day: her attitude, her focus, her kindness to herself. Each evening, she released one thing she couldn't control: her ex-husband's choices, others' opinions, the past. 3 years later, Sarah approached me after another seminar. I barely recognized her. There was a lightness about her, a quiet confidence. I'm not waiting for closure anymore. She told me, I realized that waiting for someone else to heal my hurt was keeping me tied to that hurt. So I decided to move forward without the apology, without the explanation. I decided my peace was too valuable to outsource. Sarah had discovered the ultimate truth about emotional freedom. It doesn't require others' participation. It requires only your decision to value your peace above your pain. Living beyond hurt means creating daily practices that reinforce your emotional autonomy. It means beginning each day by setting your own emotional thermostat, rather than allowing circumstances to set it for you. When negative thoughts arise, and you can acknowledge them without becoming them. That's an interesting thought. You might say to yourself, but it doesn't serve where I'm going. When difficult people cross your path, and you can engage without absorption. You can recognize that their behavior reflects their reality, not your worth. This isn't about becoming cold or disconnected. In fact, when you're no longer controlled by fear of being hurt, you become capable of deeper, more authentic connection. You can love without the desperation of needing validation. You can give without the exhaustion of self-depletion. You can receive without the anxiety of indebtedness. Sarah eventually found love again, but it wasn't her relationship status that healed her, it was her relationship with herself. By the time new love arrived, she wasn't looking for someone to complete her or validate her worth. She was simply sharing the fullness she had already created. This is the final key to ensuring nothing and nobody will ever hurt you again. Becoming so rooted in your own value. So committed to your own peace. So clear about your own boundaries that external circumstances lose their power to define your internal state. You were born with this authority. You may have given it away piece by piece. Relationship by relationship. Disappointment by disappointment. But today, in this moment, you can reclaim it. Your freedom from hurt begins and ends with this truth. You are the author of your responses, the guardian of your peace, the creator of your reality, and that power, that magnificent. Transformative power is something no one can take from you unless you give it away.